Hi everybody, welcome to my channel and welcome to my homestead. My name is Jared. In this video, I am at the homestead. We're about to take off, but I just wanted to share something really quick. I won't be able to do a video until later today, like a full video. And me and Jenica were talking about this idea of holidays, right? Because one of the big things this last general conference was how the church wants us to elevate Easter to the same level as Christmas, because it is the most, it represents the most important event in human history, the atonement, right? So that already right off the bat is interesting. We've already talked about on the channel how, that might be some kind of change, pointing to this transition time where we transition from before the second coming to after the second coming, right? And maybe that's appropriate. Maybe it's been appropriate that we celebrate Christmas on this side of the second coming, right? But now that we're phasing up, we're going to a higher, holier way of living, and we're going to have the resurrected Christ with us. Maybe it'd be appropriate to shift our focus, become higher and holier, and now focus more on Easter, right? So it makes sense. It makes sense that in the millennium we would celebrate Easter more, or really emphasize it, just because we're going to have the resurrected Christ with us, and we're going to have our resurrected family members and friends with us as well. And then just so many things. So the question came up, me and Jenica were talking about this. When the second coming happens, it's probably going to become its own holiday, I would imagine. Maybe not. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that the second coming, and when I say second coming, let's just say the final coming to the world, the final appearance to the world, or maybe even his appearance to the Jews, because maybe that would become a holiday. I'm not sure. But regardless, I don't want to get into the details of that. Just in general, when the second coming happens, do you think that that would become its own holiday? If so, it would seem that we would have like three main holidays during the millennium: Christmas, celebrating his first coming; Easter, celebrating the atonement and his resurrection; and then some other yet to be named holiday celebrating his second coming. Or do you think it's possible that the second coming would happen at or around the time of Easter, so that they're celebrated together? Now, we're already past Easter. He didn't come that we know of during Easter, unless something happened on Easter that we're not going to learn about till later. So, for example, we've talked about the fact that there's been many hints that Adam-on-Diamond has already happened or is underway. There's been at least a couple from President Nelson himself. Just do a search on my channel if you want to know what I'm talking about. Do a search on my channel for Adam-on-Diamond. I have a video called something to the effect of, have there been hints that Adam-on-Diamond has already happened? So a couple from President Nelson, one from Sister Nelson, one from Jeffrey R. Holland, when he referred to General Conference as an Adam-on-Die-like event or setting. And just other things, okay? So we know that Christ is going to come to New Jerusalem. We know that New Jerusalem is defined. It's defined a few different ways. It's defined as all of North and South America. It's also defined as the church, just in general. We looked this up recently. And then, of course, there's the center place, New Jerusalem, which I think sometimes people think that that is where Christ has to come for his second appearance. And I'm not so sure. And the reason why is because we looked up a quote from Wilford Woodruff where he quotes Joseph Smith as having said that when Christ comes to the saints, that he'll come when the saints are in the Rocky Mountains. So, what will that appearance look like? I don't know. Is he going to appear just throughout all the different temples? I don't know. Is the recent temple changes that are more Christ focused, is that him coming to New Jerusalem? I don't know. On Easter, this last Easter, did he come to President Nelson and the first presidency and the Quorum of the 12? Maybe at the Joseph Smith Memorial Building, because that's currently where they meet. They have the 8th floor that's been well, I don't want to say, I don't like sealed off or kind of turned into a temple space while the Salt Lake Temple is under construction. Has Christ come to them there, and does that count as his appearance to the New Jerusalem? I don't know. And I don't think anybody really knows, because it's not really specified what that's going to look like, what it entails. Okay. Well, here's another thing. President Oak's talk during General Conference, almost entirely, 99% of it, was Christ speaking. It was President Oak's reading from the scriptures the words of Christ that he spoke. It was a very unusual talk. I did a video about that a couple videos back, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. Does that count as Christ visiting the New Jerusalem? Was Christ somewhere present during this last General Conference? I don't know. So, just like no one really knew at the time that Joseph Smith was having, visions, the first vision, visits from the angel Moroni, receiving the gold plates. When Christ and Elijah and Moses and so on, when they appeared at the Kirtland Temple, no one knew at that moment that was happening. They didn't learn until after the fact. But when we read the scriptures, I don't think we really think about that. We're just like, oh yeah, and we know about it. But for the contemporaries of Joseph Smith, they wouldn't have known until after the fact, right? And so why would it be any different right now? So the only thing I can really say for sure is that his appearance to the Jews and his appearance to the rest of the world, it is going to be public and it'll be obvious. Okay, there's no way that that's going to really happen in secret. And based on what we've studied, the resurrection and the translation will occur by the time that he comes to the Jews, because we're going to go with him. All of us that are righteous, that have been translated, that are part of that event, we're going to come with him to the Jews and then also to the world. We've studied that. Again, you'll just have to go back and find that video. I would encourage you to watch all my videos, because we studied lots of different things, and it's not like if you go back to my older videos, it's like they're old. No, we cover all sorts of different topics, so maybe consider doing that. So, the question is, with the second coming, will it become its own separate holiday during some different time of the year, maybe in summer, for example? Or would it happen in conjunction with Easter? Either on the day of Easter, the day after Easter, because maybe Christ would want us to, on Easter, think about the atonement, and then the very next day, think about the fact that he came as a resurrected being to us. I think that's possible. Could it be a week after Easter, or during Easter week, or the week after Easter, or whatever? Yeah, why not? One thing that I've always thought about as well is, we think about all these different Jewish feast days as days that Christ would come, right? In fact, that was like a big topic of conversation during the earlier part of my channel. Not so much anymore, but I still talk about it, think about it, have a spreadsheet for it. But one thing that I've always wondered and thought about is, especially in Matthew 24, Christ uses a lot of kind of like summer, like late spring and summer imagery. So for example, he just flat out says that that summer is nigh, because you see leaves on trees starting to come in. He talks about the fig tree. There's also the parables of like the wheat and the tares, and a lot of like wheat imagery. And wheat is typically harvested in the summer. I don't know if there's like more harvest than that, but I know that like a main harvest for wheat is during the summer. when we're thinking about Pentecost, which is like the last of the spring feast. First, you have the Passover Seder, and then you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is the entire week of Passover. And then you also have First Fruits, which is the second day of, well, the Jews celebrate it as the second day of Passover, the 16th of Nisan. Or wait, no, sorry. Yeah, I think the 15th is Pesach 1, and then the 16th I think is Passover, is First Fruits. But I guess like in olden times, before this tradition developed, First Fruits was always celebrated on the first Sunday, or the first Sabbath. Sorry. First Fruits would be the day after the first Sabbath during Passover week. So it's like it changed. But anyway, so you have those three. You have the Passover meal, you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you have First Fruits. Those all take place during the same week. And then 50 days after First Fruits is when you have Pentecost, also known as the Feast of Weeks, but it's also known as the Feast of the Harvest. And one of the main motifs of Pentecost, also known as Shavuot, is wheat. If you do a Google search right now for Shavuot or the Feast of Weeks or Pentecost, you'll see a bunch of memes and stuff that has a bunch of wheat imagery. So could it be? Oh, sorry. Let me readjust. Could it be that we would celebrate Easter in the spring, we would celebrate Christmas in the winter, and then we would celebrate the second coming in the summer? That's another possibility. I don't claim to have all the answers, but just one thing that, Jenica and I were thinking about and talking about was the idea of the second coming happening during Easter, so as to really emphasize Easter, really emphasize the atonement and the resurrection. Because if the second coming happened then it would just be a really, really, really big holiday. And maybe that's the way it's intended to be. So one thing to think about is next year, what's interesting is, and I hate to think that the second coming, we still have to wait another year or 2 or 3 or 4 or however many, but it is what it is, and we'll only find out once it actually happens. But one interesting thing about next year is next year's the year of the 2024 eclipse, right? There was the one in 2017 that the path of totality went over Adam-on-Diamond and Independence, Missouri, and Far West, and a bunch of other church sites in that area. And the path of totality had to be that exact path. It couldn't be north a few miles, it couldn't be south a few miles, otherwise not all of those church sites would have been in the path of totality. And the same holds true for this upcoming eclipse, because it goes over Palmyra, right, the site of the first vision, as well as the Kirtland Temple, which again Christ appeared in that place as well, and then a host of other church sites. These two eclipses are very LDS, very our church in nature. I feel like they should be seen as a specific message to us as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because how is it that these not too common eclipses happen 7 years apart, roughly, over major church sites that are specific to our church? In what, if as though that's not enough, the fact that these eclipses are kind of more rare, because it's rare to have an eclipse that goes from coast to coast. That's kind of what makes these eclipses just all the more special. If you're not a member of our church and you're just like, even if you're an atheist, it's like, wow, that doesn't happen very often. But the fact that those eclipses go over major church sites, I think that really says something. So next year, 2024, around this time, we're going to have the next eclipse. In fact, we're going to have the April General Conference I think it's the 6th and the 7th of April. And then the next day, on the 8th, that's when the eclipse happens, which is also very LDS specific. So that's something to really think about. And it might be, sorry, give me just one second. What? I had to open the trunk for my daughter. So what if next year is the year of the second coming? What if Christ comes? I don't know what day Easter is next year. I'm not at my computer right now. But what if next year we have this special general conference where the eclipse follows on that Monday, and then whenever Easter is, what if that's the time that Christ makes one of his appearances? Whether any of the 4 appearances, I don't care. Whatever you want to plug in there. There's a lot that can happen between now and then. The other thing to think about, I know that a lot of people are thinking about the Salt Lake Temple and how that probably needs to be finished before the second coming, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the Lord intentionally wants it to be under construction because, like think about this. Think about it this way. So you have probably a good portion of the church. Okay, so let's let's break it down like this. Okay, so you have the wheat and the tares in the church. So let's just exclude the tares from this because they're tares. Who knows what they think about the second coming, if they're even watching for it? Probably not, because they're tares. So if you look at just the wheat, you have to wonder what percentage of the wheat feels that the second coming is close or feels that it's far away. I feel like there's a good number of people among the wheat, just like the general wheat, that view the second coming as like, it's like, they don't think about it or they push it off into the future. Now, break it down even more, and within the wheat, you look at the LDS second coming community. I don't really like to call it that, but I mean, because there's all these like different types of identities and communities nowadays. But the LDS second coming watcher / second coming community, even within that group, and you may fall into this, and that's okay because you might be right, but you may be wrong. But even within the LDS second coming community, there's a number of people that don't think that the second coming is anywhere close to us. Like there's still too much that has to happen. That's the classic phrase that comes up from time to time in the comments section, usually from people that are new to the channel. That'll be like, oh no, I like your thoughts, but there's just still too much that has to happen. Sorry, I don't mean to be offensive. Just know it's a little annoying. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe the way that you view it all is happening. Maybe it's right, but I feel like there's not too much that has to happen. Watch my entire channel to find out why. But even within the second coming community, there's a number of people that are kind of like, they have it pushed off into the future for whatever reasoning, whatever purpose. And I feel like the Salt Lake Temple could push yet another group of people into the future because they feel like it has to be finished before the second coming. So the Lord may intentionally, because he wants it to be like a surprise. That's the intention of it. That's why no man knows the day or the hour, which we know that the prophet will, but we will not. Not going to go over that again. So, because you have to take into account, and I think it's in Matthew 24, the scripture that talks about that he comes at a time that ye think not. And he doesn't specify any given group. He says, I come at a time that ye think not. And the way that I read that is, just generally speaking, like no one's really going to be ready or know. Like we're going to know in the sense that, just like the whole comparison to a woman that's giving, that's in labor, that the time's coming, but you don't know exactly when the baby's going to come out. So people will generally know. Bruce R. McConkie said that yes, it can be narrowed down to a generation, and it seems like this is the generation based on what he said. Basically President Nelson's generation. So we roughly know, but I think at the same time, the scripture that I come at a time that ye think not, I think that still holds true. You know, I get the sense with many people on this channel and other channels, like just this community, that it's like, well, it's really close, but not yet, or it's really close, but now's not the time. And I've asked the question many times on the channel, the year that the second coming happens, what is that year supposed to look like? Is it going to be super obvious? And the second coming before the general conference before the second coming, what's that general conference going to be like? Is it going to be super obvious? I tend not to think so. I think that probably what we've seen these last 3 general conferences is probably as obvious as it's going to get. That's just me. So I would not be surprised if it happened today. And when I say happen today, I just mean, you know, coming to the Jews or whatever. You might say, well, but, you know, Armageddon's not happening yet. I'm not so sure that even Armageddon is going to be so obvious, or that it's going to be like this thing that's going on for such a long time. Things could flare up very, very quick. You could have a situation like the Yom Kippur War, where in one day, by surprise, Israel is invaded. Of course, you know, we have better technology now than we did back then, so satellites would probably pick up troop movements and stuff like that, which I don't think they were really able to tell back in those days, so that's why it was a surprise. But I'm just not going to be surprised at all if it happens sooner than later. That is certainly my hope. Things in Israel right now are simmering. It's been kind of weird because there's been kind of like flare-ups, and then it kind of like calms down, and then there's been another flare-up, and then it calms down. I haven't checked the news today. I'll probably have to do that after I get done making this video. But I feel like things over there could get really crazy really fast. Again, I saw another article from Haaretz, which is a newspaper out of Israel, a news company. And they talked about the fact, like in the title of this article, that there's a perfect storm right now for Israel to be fighting a multi-front war from Iran, from Hamas, and from Hezbollah. So it's just, I don't know. It's really interesting. Okay, so I don't know. I guess I kind of lost myself. So I guess like the main thing I'd like to know from you, do you think that there's going to be 3 big holidays? Christmas, Easter, and the second coming. Do you think there's going to be 3? Do you think that the second coming will be wrapped up into Easter? Or maybe even Christmas? Who knows? What do you guys think? All right, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, excuse me, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. And I'll talk to you guys later.